Have you ever noticed that the loudest man in the room isn't always the one people trust the most? Sometimes the quiet man who barely says a word ends up leaving the strongest impression. Why? What makes calmness so powerful, especially in the eyes of women? The answer isn't about being silent, it isn't about being shy, and it definitely isn't about pretending to be mysterious. It's psychology. Today, we're exploring 5 fascinating psychological reasons why women naturally feel more comfortable trusting calm men, and by the end of this video, you might completely change the way you think about confidence. Let's begin. Trust doesn't happen by accident. The human brain constantly scans for clues that answer one important question: is this person emotionally safe? Most of these judgments happen without anyone realizing it. Within minutes of meeting someone, our brains notice tone of voice, emotional reactions, body language, patience, and even how someone handles silence. Interestingly, research in psychology suggests that emotional regulation often creates a stronger impression than outward confidence. That's why calm people frequently appear more dependable. This doesn't mean every calm man is trustworthy, and it doesn't mean every energetic or outspoken man isn't. These are simply psychological tendencies, not universal rules. So let's explore the 5 reasons behind this fascinating pattern. Reason 1: calmness signals emotional stability. Imagine 2 men facing the exact same problem. One immediately becomes frustrated. His voice gets louder. He blames everyone around him. The other takes a deep breath. He listens. He thinks before responding. He stays composed. Without realizing it, which one would most people feel safer around? For many women, emotional stability is one of the strongest trust signals. Why? Because our brains naturally associate emotional control with predictability. When someone stays calm under pressure, they seem less likely to react impulsively. Psychologists often describe emotional regulation as one of the foundations of healthy relationships. People who manage their emotions well create an environment where others feel less anxious. Think about your own life. Who do you usually call when something goes wrong? The person who panics or the person who stays calm? Exactly. Calmness communicates, I'm not controlled by every emotion I feel. And that's reassuring. Here's something interesting. Calm men aren't emotionless. They simply don't allow every feeling to control their behavior. That difference matters more than many people realize. Reason 2: calm people make others feel heard. Have you ever talked to someone who interrupted every sentence? Before you finish speaking, they already had an opinion, already had advice, already made the conversation about themselves. Now compare that with someone who listens carefully. They pause, they maintain eye contact, they don't rush to speak. Suddenly, you feel understood. This is one of the biggest psychological reasons calm people earn trust. Listening creates emotional validation, and validation builds connection. Many calm men naturally leave more space in conversations, not because they're trying to impress anyone, but because they're comfortable allowing silence to exist. Ironically, silence often says more than words. Women frequently remember how someone made them feel, not how many impressive stories they told. A calm listener communicates, your thoughts matter. That simple feeling can leave a lasting impression. So far, we've talked about emotional stability and the power of listening. But the next reason is probably the most surprising. It has almost nothing to do with personality, and everything to do with how the human brain judges confidence. Most people completely misunderstand this. Let's continue. Reason 3: calmness is often mistaken for quiet confidence. There's a common belief that confidence means being the loudest person in the room. Psychology suggests something different. Real confidence rarely needs constant proof. Imagine someone who walks into a meeting. They don't dominate every conversation, they don't try to impress everyone, but when they finally speak, people pay attention. Why? Because their behavior appears intentional. The brain often interprets controlled behavior as confidence. Fast movements, constant talking, and nervous energy can sometimes signal uncertainty. Again, not always. But first impressions rely on shortcuts. Calm behavior often becomes one of those shortcuts. Women may unconsciously think he doesn't seem desperate for approval. That creates curiosity. Instead of demanding attention, calm men often attract attention naturally. There's an important lesson here. Confidence isn't measured by volume. Sometimes it's measured by composure. Reason 4: calm men reduce emotional stress. Think about the people who leave you feeling exhausted after every conversation. Everything becomes drama. Every small issue feels like a crisis. Every disagreement becomes an argument. Now think about someone who has the opposite effect. You feel relaxed around them. Conversations flow naturally. Problems seem manageable. That's emotional influence. Psychologists know emotions spread between people. This process is often called emotional contagion. If someone constantly projects stress, Others often absorb it. If someone consistently projects calmness, that emotional state can become contagious too. Women, like everyone else, often appreciate people who make interactions feel emotionally comfortable. Not because life should always be peaceful, but because emotional balance creates psychological safety. Imagine sitting beside someone during a delayed flight. One passenger becomes angry, complains constantly, raises their voice. Another simply accepts the situation, smiles, starts an enjoyable conversation. Which experience would feel easier? The answer is obvious. Calm energy often lowers everyone else's stress. That's incredibly attractive from a psychological perspective. Reason 5, consistency builds trust faster than charm. Here's the biggest secret. Trust isn't built by grand gestures, it's built by consistency. Anyone can appear charming for one afternoon. Anyone can say the perfect words. But consistency is much harder to fake. Calm men often appear more predictable. Their reactions don't change dramatically every day. Their behavior feels steady, and the brain loves consistency. Why? Because predictability reduces uncertainty. When people know what to expect, their stress decreases. Imagine two coworkers. One is friendly on Monday, cold on Tuesday, excited on Wednesday, angry on Thursday. You never know which version you'll meet. Now imagine another coworker, always respectful, always patient, always reliable. Who feels easier to trust? Consistency quietly earns credibility. Women often notice these patterns over time, not because they're searching for perfection, but because stable behavior creates emotional security. In psychology, repeated positive experiences slowly reshape expectations. That's exactly how trust grows, not overnight, but one interaction at a time. Here's where many people get confused. Some believe becoming calm means hiding emotions. It doesn't. Healthy calmness isn't emotional suppression, it's emotional awareness. There's a huge difference. Suppressing emotions means pretending they don't exist. Managing emotions means recognizing them without letting them control your actions. That's true emotional maturity, and people notice it. You don't need the perfect appearance, you don't need the perfect career, you don't need to deliver perfect conversations. People rarely remember perfection, they remember how safe they felt around you. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm. The wind is strong, everything feels chaotic. Now imagine seeing one solid lighthouse standing quietly against the waves. It doesn't shout, it doesn't panic, it simply remains steady. That's how calmness often feels to others. Steady, reliable, grounded, and in an unpredictable world, those qualities naturally stand out. But here's something equally important. Calmness should never become a performance. If someone pretends to be calm while secretly becoming resentful or emotionally disconnected, people often sense that inconsistency. Authenticity matters. Real calmness develops through self-awareness, through patience, through experience, not through acting. Remember, women are individuals with different personalities, experiences, and preferences. No single trait guarantees trust. Psychology only helps explain patterns that many people experience. It doesn't predict every person. The healthiest connections always grow from honesty, respect, and genuine communication. So let's quickly bring everything together. Women often feel naturally drawn toward calm men because calmness can communicate emotional stability, like it creates space for meaningful conversations, it signals quiet confidence, it reduces emotional stress, and over time, consistency becomes one of the strongest foundations of trust. Notice something interesting. None of these reasons involve expensive clothes, status, or trying to impress everyone. They're all connected to emotional behavior. That's something anyone can improve, not overnight, but gradually. Every conversation becomes an opportunity. Every challenge becomes practice. Every moment of patience strengthens emotional maturity. Because the strongest confidence isn't always the loudest. Sometimes it's simply the calmest. If you found these psychological insights interesting, let me know in the comments. Which of these 5 reasons surprised you the most? I genuinely love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy psychology, human behavior, and relationship insights backed by thoughtful discussion, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. There are many more fascinating topics coming soon. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the strongest impression you leave isn't created by speaking louder. It's created by staying calm when everyone else loses theirs.